Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest Detroit Regional Chamber Town Hall Series. I'm joined today by my colleague, Tammy Carnwright, who will be monitoring our question box as we interview our special guest. Now, before I interview and introduce our special guest today, just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who have joined us by computer, there is a control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you use your bionic eye, you'll see a little box that says questions. And if you'd like to type in a question for our guest today, feel free to type in a question and we'll get to as many questions as we can before we end our interview roughly in about 30 minutes. So I am very pleased to welcome our guest today, Patricia Mooradian, who serves as the CEO of the Henry Ford Museum. She has been in that role since 2005, and under her leadership, the museum has been credited with a whole generation of innovation and expansion and has really moved the museum to another level. One of the things that she has done, among many, is created a partnership with a television show called Innovation Nation with the Henry Ford, hosted by Mo Rocca, that actually airs Saturdays on CBS television. And I want to talk to her a little bit about that before our time is up. And as either a disclaimer and or a thank you, Patricia, you also serve on the board of the Detroit Regional Chamber, and we thank you for that as well. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's an honor to serve. It's an honor to be here, Sandy, and it's great to see you and talk to you this way.
Great. Well, good. Well, listen, we have a lot to get to. The Henry Ford Museum is one of our nation's, and let alone the state's, most important cultural institutions. It's certainly Michigan's most visited cultural institution and has numerous other awards. But like everybody else, every business, every nonprofit out there, COVID has certainly thrown a huge curveball into your operations. Talk at a very high level, what kind of hit has the institution taken with the advent of the COVID crisis?
Well, we closed our doors on March 13th, and we reopened in a much scaled down, modified way on July 2nd. At the end of the year, we expect to have our first deficit over the 20 years I've been here, 10 to 20 million. It's a lot of money for an institution like ours. We've never run a deficit before, at least in the last several decades. And that has been unprecedented. I think, the biggest issue for us as a nonprofit is that we're a 501c3. We're not connected to Ford Motor Company in a formal way. We don't get state funding or federal funding. Our institution does not benefit from a millage. So we have had to earn our revenue to keep ourselves operating. In 2020, when we hit this year, we were on target to have a $77 million operating budget. And it would be the highest year that we ever had. We had huge anticipation for that, a lot of excitement around that. And basically a lot of that is 65% of it, to be specific, is earned. We do have an endowment, and that endowment helps us operate on an annual basis. We can take up to 5% on a 16-quarter rolling average. It is governed by our board of trustees and our finance committee. And it does serve a purpose, a big purpose for us in helping us to operate and make up the balance of what we don't earn. But we also take donations, and we have to raise at least 20% or so of our annual operating budget. So when you close your doors, like all the businesses around here were closed, you don't earn. And so that will be a significant hit to this institution going forward. I could keep going. There's a lot of ways in which the impact is significant in the mission fit, but there's a lot of things we did during that closure as well to keep the mission going.
Yeah, well, no, I definitely want to get into that. Well, first, I'm really glad that you reminded our audience that the Henry Ford Museum is not formally part of the Ford Motor Company, and I think that's a misconception that a lot of people, even here that live here, still believe. So I'm glad you reminded people of that. But being closed, you had this dual whammy of obviously you weren't getting gate revenue, but also it was more difficult to earn other kinds of revenue that keep the museum afloat. How much is gate revenue in the whole scheme of things, and how did being closed impact other revenue streams that the museum relies upon?
I mean, the majority of that 65% that we earn is from gate. However, we do a large catering business. We do a lot of after-hours special events. We do special ticketed events like Halloween and holiday nights. And we also have retail stores and restaurants. And all of those really come together to give us that 65% of operating revenue every year. So everything that we have built our model around, a 250-acre campus, 6 venues with a high school and 5 public venues, has taken a serious hit from COVID because we have built our reputation on doing large events, a lot of people, concerts, big events like holiday nights where people are in close quarters, for instance. And so all of those things, weddings that we do after hours, corporate events, family picnics, all of those things can't be done during this time period, and rightly so. I mean, we said when we closed, the number one thing was that we wanted the health and safety and well-being of our staff, our guests, and our community to be the number one reason why we do anything. And so that we've taken to heart and really made sure that we keep that first and foremost in our minds as we move forward.
Well, the fact that you closed your doors on March 13th, that was several days before the governor mandated the closure. So you were very much ahead of the curve. So clearly you were thinking about health and safety of the people associated with the museum first and foremost.
We were, and I remember that we had a board meeting on March, I think it was March 10th, and talked about what was going on in the world and in the community, and we're speculating on how far it would actually go. And at that point, you might recall, I believe there were no confirmed cases yet, or at least publicly known in our community. However, that was starting to change, and we were starting to hear about it, and we really felt like as a large space and a large gathering space, that the risk was just not worth it, because eventually we could see it going in the direction and pattern of other countries. And we thought, let's just get ahead of this for our institution and for our community now.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned your board of trustees. You know, first of all, you have one of the most prestigious boards out there. But some of the people on your board obviously are people who operate globally. You have some people like Bill Ford and Etzel Ford and Mark Royce and Hu Tao Tang, and people who are very globally savvy. But speaking of your board, you and your board created a new campaign to help fill at least some of this deficit. Talk to us about the Reactivate Henry Ford campaign. What's it all about? What do you hope to achieve?
So Reactivate the Henry Ford is a call to all of our stakeholders to help this institution right itself, get back on its feet, and to continue in the ability to have our mission fit programming for everybody. And that means if you can visit, please visit, do it safely, come. We've put all the safety measures and protocols in place. If you can buy a membership, please buy a membership. That helps us to keep our doors open. If you can donate, please donate. We are a nonprofit of 501c3, and like I said earlier, we don't get state or federal funding. And by the way, we did not qualify because of our size for any of the PPP funding either. And so what we do to make up the deficit is going to be through our donations and through people visiting and coming back and helping us reactivate. So we liked the word reactivate because it really is about making sure you we generate the love for this institution that we can keep generating through all of the activities and the great things that we do as an institution overall. So it's important to love what we treasure, and we treasure the Henry Ford.
So when you talk about reactivating, what are some of the things that you've had to cut back on. Obviously, $10 to $20 million out of a $77 million budget is a huge hit for any institution. So what kinds of things have you had to throttle back on in terms of programming or what's open, or even the number of employees are you able to keep on the payroll?
Well, so immediately after close down, we had to immediately assess, just like every other organization, what the impact was going to be and what the length of time is going to be. And it became pretty known quickly that this was going to be a long-term thing. So and very, very sadly for us, it was very difficult. We had to furlough about 1,400 of our 1,700 staff and employees. We did keep their health benefits in place. We thought during a pandemic that we absolutely want to keep their health benefits in place. We still have people on furlough now. We did pay cuts to the executive team and to the senior leadership team that ranged from 10 to 25%. We basically stopped all spending and analyzed everything, every penny that was going out the door. We saved or stopped so that we could figure out what was priority, what we had to do. If a roof was leaking, we needed to fix that. But basically, all major projects just came to a halt. We put in all new financial procedures for approving what does get spent that was different than the past. And so basically, all budgets for that $77 million were put on freeze. Then we had to assess where we were going and how soon it would be that we could open. So we basically sent all of us, we went to school, just like everybody else. We consulted with health professionals. We called some of the people on our board, put us in touch with all the people in their companies that were doing different things. We called arenas and large scale organizations to see what they were doing. And the result of that was a 50-page, 47-page handbook that we put together for our safety protocols that would keep us safe, that would keep our guests safe, and that would give us the leeway we needed, the guidelines we needed to determine how safely we could open. Because as you know, we have Greenfield Village, there are rides, there are 83 historic structures. It's a very complex thing to put together because we couldn't just, the restaurants had to follow the restaurant guidelines, the retail for the retail guidelines. There's small buildings in the village. How do we get people in and out safely? So we had to look at every single facet of this, 250-acre campus. And with that, our team was able to pull together an operating plan that would give us the ability to operate safely. And part of that was coming up with, and we have engineers on our team, they engineered and customized acrylic panels between the steam locomotive seats so people could ride it outdoors, but we wanted the extra safety there. And so we have those panels that go across the benches. We were looking at how to do the different components in the museum, for instance, safely. Right now, today, we are a 4-day-a-week operation. We've always been a 7-day-a-week operation. So the village and the museum are 4 days. We limited our capacities to 25%, which is just a small fraction of what we actually can fit. As you know, it's large, so you can fit a lot more, but we wanted to make sure that people didn't feel crowded and that they would have the social distancing necessary to enjoy the campus. All the buildings aren't open, but we do have the train and the carousel operating, the playground just opened. As we become familiar and comfortable with it and we're watching our guest patterns, we're able to open up other things. We just opened 2 weeks ago the marble exhibition in the museum at a far reduced capacity to what we had originally planned, but it's still open and it's an exciting exhibit. So we had to take everything individually and really look at it as we pieced the whole plan together. And only 2 of the venues are open. The Ford Rouge Factory Tour is not open yet. And the Benson Ford Research Center and our giant screen theater, they're also still closed. Right.
Now, 25%, that number strikes me as lower than what is kind of legally the legal guideline, right? You could technically go to more than that, but you've chosen to be extra cautious, it sounds.
We've chosen to be extra cautious, but we wanted to watch people's patterns and see what the demand would be. Because in the past, we just opened in the morning and whoever wanted to come would come and we would let them in. Now we have time-ticketed slots so that we can reduce the morning crowds in particular and spread it out throughout the day. And so people are encouraged to go online. Now that doesn't mean that if you show up, we're not going to let you in. Of course we are, and we are working with that, but we are trying to gauge and let people pick the slot that they want that's convenient to them and know that it will be paced out. So we can do more, and we're looking at the possibility of doing more over time, but we're waiting to see what the demand is and what people's patterns are. Because the more people we have, the more staff we need, and the more staff we need, the more we have to spend. And so it's just a cycle and trying to figure out what that balance is so that we can keep our finances in balance so that the deficit isn't any more than it needs to be at the end of the year.
Now, the Reactivate the Henry Ford campaign, do you have a dollar bogey that you're hoping to raise?
Well, we'd love to raise at least the $10 million to help us with that deficit. We do have a board member that has generously offered to match the donations we get, so we hope that people feel good about that and able to donate for that. I can say we are extremely good stewards of the donations of our stakeholders and care very deeply about the people that contribute to our institution. We're very, very grateful for that.
And how much money in a campaign like this are you expecting to raise locally, kind of within Michigan? And obviously you're an international institution. You have friends all over the planet. Do you think you have fundraising opportunities outside of Michigan and the United States?
We do. It's the closer in are the majority, mostly in Michigan and in our region and community. We have a lot of friends that are car collectors, a lot of friends across the institution, across the United States in foundations and corporations that really support the innovation message and the innovation educational products. So we do have some national and global companies that also contribute. Most of them are contributing to specific programs, and so the raising of funds, unrestricted funds for a deficit is a little bit different than when you're raising funds for something specific.
So looking a little bit more broadly, Patricia, we all know the Henry Ford as a museum, as a place that has collected, the nation's greatest artifacts when it comes to innovation and engineering. But you're really an education institution. So
yeah.
Talk about your role as educator and how you implement that role. Henry Ford as an educator, not just as a museum.
Thank you for that. And a 501c3 it requires an educational mission, and our mission is to teach people about the stories, the great American stories of innovation, ingenuity, and resourcefulness. And we have those terrific, tremendous collections, some of the best in the world, that help us tell those stories. And so we have this very, very strong foundation and a vast amount of knowledge and information that helps us to piece stories together to help people learn. So we have an education and learning department. We have a whole department of content with the curators and the curation in various categories and areas. And we have a digital department and many other departments that help feed into that programmatically as well. And we have a pretty robust educational platform online. As a matter of fact, the minute we left and on March 13th, one of the first things we did was a Teams meeting the next day to say, what can we do now to help our communities? We're closing down, the kids are leaving school. Remember, we have a high school on our campus with 500 kids. The day we closed, our school closed as well. And so we had to send kids home with laptops and computers if they didn't have them already, get them access to the internet. Those were just our kids. So we knew that people all over the country and actually the globe were needing educational materials. we knew we had them, and we had them online. And what we did was we made all of them immediately accessible and usable for parents, not just teachers. We made our curriculum open source. We put a lot more materials together that we didn't have, and we did it all within a period of 2 weeks. So the turnaround was immediate, and we were able to take some of the foundation dollars that we had, and we immediately put it towards our online education. And we also began to implement virtual live curated talks for different age levels, including preschool all the way up through high school. And we were in regular communication with all of our teachers. The other really big thing we did, Sandy, as you know, we have the National Invention Convention every year, which is for young students all the way up through high school, where they compete with their inventions for prizes. And they do that in person. An invention convention this year was scheduled for June 5th. And so that immediately got canceled, and we said, how can we do this online? We didn't have it planned for online, but we said, let's turn it around, let's make it online. And we did. And we had just as many competitors, over 500 or so, online competing with their inventions, and the highest number of judges. We had 883 judges from across the country, some who would not have been able to be here to judge in person. So we think there are a lot of lessons to learn from this pandemic and from this closure, and we are learning those lessons and really thinking about what we've learned and how that can help us reshape the kind of institution we are for engaging and learning across the globe now and ongoing.
Well, running an institution that is dedicated to ingenuity and innovation, I'm not surprised that you and your team pivoted in such an innovative way. So, congratulations to the entire team. I want to move a little bit and expand on the education theme, and I mentioned this in the introduction. You have a television show.
We do.
So talk about Innovation Nation with Mo Rocca and how it came about and the show. And I know it's presumably built for kids, but I love it. I watch it every Saturday morning.
Well, thank you for that. I love it too. It's a great show, and it has a great team of producers, and our staff works extremely hard on it with the production team. We met the producers at a conference. It was an accidental meeting. They saw we had a name, and my colleague was there. She had a name tag on it, said the Henry Ford, and the producer was walking by and said, I love the Henry Ford. We should talk. And they started talking, and she came back. She said, I met this guy who produces educational TV program. Do you think? And we said, you know what? It's easy to have a conversation. Let's talk. And literally within 3 months, the board had approved for us to move forward because they are a reputable organization. They produce all of the educational programming for CBS, ABC, and NBC, and the CW network. They started out a couple decades ago with Jack Hanna's Zoo show, and so now they have a lot of the educational programming, and we're in that lineup as well. I will tell you this, and I'm really excited about it. On Sunday night, we won our 3rd Emmy Award.
Hey, congratulations!
So that was pretty fun. And this year, because of the pandemic, the Emmys were not the educational Emmys. The educational daytime Emmys were not in person. We've gone to them in the past, and we've won a couple. We're nominated every year, but we haven't won in a few years now, so we were really excited. The texts were flying on Sunday night when we were announced, so that was pretty good. But it's like getting the Good Housekeeping seal of approval that what you're producing is quality, that people like it, and they're watching it. We are this fall going into our 7th season, so it's 7 going into 7 years, 6 full years. So it's been really good for the Henry Ford. It's good for us to share the mission in a new way. It is syndicated in over 60 countries, so it's out in the world in a new way. It does bring us visitors. Obviously not right now, but people come because they've seen the show and they love the show and they love Mo Rocca. He's terrific, and all of the hosts with him, Allie and Adam, they're fantastic, all of our hosts, and so they really do a great job in bringing these stories to life. And they do it with our curators, and so many of our curators now are recognized on the floor of the museum as a lot by little kids asking for autographs and things. So I've only been on the show once, really early on. I think I was a token.
Well, I think it's great that you have added a new benefit to employment at the Henry Ford Museum, which is the potential to be a television star, which is not what employers can offer. So that's awesome. Yeah, no, I love the show. Actually, I know the folks at Lytton, and when they come to town, they give me a call, or we try to go have a cocktail. Well, not anymore, but yeah, no, it's a great team, and I've spent some time with Moraka. Actually, he truly is a genuinely curious human being.
He is so smart, and he doesn't just read a script. He dives in. He knows the stories. He's curious about the stories. He reads up about them before he even comes. He suggests things. He's really a wonderful person, and so are all the other hosts. They're fantastic, and they are all equally curious. So it's very well talented. I mean, the team is really good. They're really good. And the writers, as a matter of fact, the Emmy that we won was for writing. And so our executive producer is also the writer, and he and the whole team that write do a fantastic job.
Yeah. Well, no, it's I really encourage our audience, if they haven't seen it, to take a look at it. We only have a couple minutes left, and I do have a couple more questions I want to get to. So the Henry Ford is about 90 years old right now. So that means your Centennial is coming up in the not too distant future. And when the Henry Ford was founded, you had some pretty notable people. Obviously, you had the president at the time, and you had Marie Curie. You obviously had Henry Ford. So you must be thinking about what you're going to do to celebrate the Henry Ford Centennial. What are your thoughts?
We are already thinking about it. As a matter of fact, so this is kind of, it's funny in a way, well, not funny, haha, but in October, every year I do a dinner for our stakeholders and donors and community leaders, and in October we did that dinner, and we announced our journey to 100. It was our 90th birthday, October 21st. In 2019, we were 90, and it was the perfect opportunity to say in 10 more years to this day, we will be 100 years old, and join us in our journey to 100. And we were mapping out our strategies for the next 10 years and starting to look at the kinds of things that we might be able to do. And the pandemic is just hopefully a short, small window of being sidelined on that, but we will get back to our plans for being that and announcing other things that we might do along the way. So.
Well, when I think of the Henry Ford Museum and the pandemic, I'm just waiting to see the innovations that society has developed in response to the pandemic, perfectly fitting in with the mission of the museum.
As a matter of fact, our curatorial team has launched a collecting initiative to look at what does come out of the pandemic, to collect it, to document, to think about this so that we can learn in the future, if it were to happen again, what we could learn from it. But we often say that with the invention convention and our invention curriculum and we have an Innovate curriculum that teaches the core aspects of innovation. We call it Model I, from as a play on Model I, I for me, I for innovation, invention, imagination. It could go many ways, but those are all there are the traits and characteristics and habits of an innovator that can be adopted, and we teach them in the curriculum. And the more students and young people and people of all ages that can adopt that mindset, there are many ways to be innovative. It's not just through inventing something. You can innovate in a process. You can innovate when you're problem solving. There are approaches that are innovative, and that's what we're hoping that will help people today, so that in the future We have the problem solvers we need. We have the workforce we need to solve the problems. And there are big problems in the world today, as we all know, and there always have been. And innovation is a way to move out of those problems and into the problem solving. And making mistakes and learning from them is core to that.
Absolutely. Final question. So I imagine as the museum shut down and since you've had the chance to walk the floor of the museum probably all by yourself, just with your thoughts and your footfalls going through. When you look around the museum in quiet moments like that, Patricia, what do you think you're missing? What is it that you want to get your hands on that you think, you know, that needs to be here at my museum, not someplace else? Or here's a missing piece of history that we need to find that would fit perfectly here in the Henry Ford collection.
So there is a list. We have a collecting plan. We don't collect randomly. We collect very specifically with things in mind. And there are many things. I really probably couldn't pinpoint one specific thing, but there are categories of things in the area of energy and the environment, things that are taking place today to make our world a little more environmentally friendly, et cetera. Those are the things we're looking for. We're looking for things in the area of food waste and agriculture and how farming and other ways of producing foods are affecting the world and feeding the world. A side note, we fundraised last year and finished the campaign for the farmers market that was originally down in Detroit in the 1860s. It was going to be destroyed. We saved it from destruction because we were able to raise all that money and it's there and restricted for the farmers market. We're able to build it now, even through this pandemic. So the work is underway, and we hope that this time next year we will be celebrating in person with all of our good friends from the chamber and around the community the erection of the old original Detroit Central Farmers Market in Greenfield Village for all to enjoy, and we plan to bring a lot of people around that. So those are the kinds of artifacts that we look for that can help us learn well into the future. And that includes things in the area of design and things that were transformative to this country moving forward.
Well, that sounds great, and I look forward to being there. Patricia, thank you not just for your time today, but thank you for your incredible leadership of this great cultural institution that we have in our backyard. And thank you for joining us live from the actual Henry Ford today.
Thanks for having us and for having me. I really appreciate it. All of us at the Henry Ford do.
Great. Well, Patricia, you have a great day. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.